dreams, I found myself in the room. There were no distinguishing features except for the one wall covered with small index card files.
They were like the ones in libraries that list titles by author or subject in alphabetical order.
But these files, which stretched from floor to ceiling and seemingly endlessly in either direction, had very different headings.
As I drew near the wall of files, the first to catch my attention was the one that read,
Girls I have liked.
I opened it and began flipping through the cards. I quickly shut it, shocked to realize that I recognized the names written on each one.
And then without being told, I knew exactly where I was. This lifeless room with its small files was a crude catalog system for my life. Here were written the actions of my every moment, big and small, in a detail my memory couldn't match.
A sense of wonder and curiosity, coupled with horror, stirred within me as I began randomly opening the files and exploring their content.
some brought joy and sweet memories.
Others, a sense of shame and regret so intense that I would look over my shoulder to see if anyone was watching.
A file named Friends was next to the one marked Friends I Have Betrayed.
The titles ranged from the mundane to the outright weird.
Books I have read,
Lies I have told.
Comfort I Have Given.
jokes I have laughed at.
Some were almost hilarious in their exactness. Things I have yelled at my brothers.
Others I couldn't laugh at.
Things I have done in my anger. Things I have muttered under my breath at my parents.
I never ceased to be surprised by the content. Often there were many more than I had expected, sometimes fewer than I had hoped.
I was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the life I had lived.
Could it be possible that I had the time in my 20 years to write each of these thousands or even millions of cards? But each card confirmed this truth. Each was written in my own handwriting, each signed with my signature.
When I pulled out the file, marked Songs I Have Listened to, I realized the file grew to contain its contents. The cards were packed tightly, and yet after 2 or 3 yards, I still hadn't found the end of the file. I shut it shamed, not so much by the quality of music, but more by the vast amount of time I knew that file represented.
When I came to a file marked Lustful Thoughts, I felt a chill run through my body. I pulled the file out, only an inch, not willing to test its size, and drew out a card. I shuddered at its detailed content. I felt sick to think that such a moment had been recorded.
An almost animal rage broke on me. One thought dominated my mind.
No one must ever see these cards. No one must ever see this room. I have to destroy them.
In an insane frenzy, I yanked out the file. Its size didn't matter now. I had to empty it and burn the cards. But as I took it at one end and began pounding it on the floor, I could not dislodge a single card.
I became desperate and pulled out a card, only to find that it was as strong as steel when I tried to tear it.
Defeated and utterly helpless, I returned the file to its slot. Leaning my forehead against the wall, I let out a long, self-pitying sigh. And then I saw it. Its title bore People I Have Shared the Gospel With. Its handle was brighter than those around it, newer, almost unused. I pulled on its handle, and a small box not more than 3 inches long fell into my hands. I could count the cards it contained on one hand.
And then the tears came. I began to weep. Sobs so deep that the hurt started in my stomach and shook through me. I fell on my knees and cried. I cried out of shame from the overwhelming shame of it all. The rows of file shelves swirled in my tear-filled eyes. No one must ever, ever know of this room. I must lock it up and hide the key.
But as I pushed away the tears, I saw him.
No, please not him. Not here. Oh, anyone but Jesus.
I watched helplessly as he began opening the files and reading the cards. I couldn't bear to watch his response. And in the moments I could bring myself to look at his face, I saw a sorrow deeper than my own. He seemed to intuitively go to the worst boxes. Oh, why did he have to read every one?
Finally, he turned and looked at me from across the room. He looked at me with pity in his eyes. But this was a pity that didn't anger me. I dropped my head, covered my face with my hands, and began to cry again.
What seemed like ages passed, but then there he was. He put his arm around me. He could have said so many things, but he didn't say a word. He just cried with me.
He got back up and walked back to the wall of files. He's starting at one end of the room. He pulled out a file, and one by one, began to sign his name over mine on each card.
No!
I shouted, rushing to him. All I could find to say was,
No, no!
as I pulled the cards from him.
His name shouldn't be on these cards, but there it was, written in red, so rich, so dark, so alive. The name of Jesus covered mine. It was written with his blood.
He gently took the card back. He smiled a sad smile and began to sign the cards again. I don't think I'll ever understand how he did it so quickly. But in the next instant, it seemed I had heard him close the last file and walk back to my side. He placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "It is finished."
I stood up and he led me out of the room. There was no lock on his door. There were still cards to be written.
Amen.